All right. Hey, everybody. This is Rob and Jordan of Archangel Ink. And we're back with Archangel Ink Live #2. We're
What is up?
Yeah, what's up, Jordan? Thanks for being on here tonight with me.
Not a problem.
Cool. So we are attempting to stream both to Facebook and to YouTube. So we'll see what happens. And we're just going to go ahead and keep our fingers crossed. And if there are some technical issues, we'll try and figure them out afterward rather than troubleshoot now. So
We'll fix it for next week.
Exactly. So Jordan, one of the ideas that I had was to talk about audio production. Now, I know that you have your new book, which I want to give you a chance to chat about for a little bit, and you are doing an audio version of it. Is that right? Cool. So if you would talk a little bit about audio production from your standpoint as an author, also as somebody who does audio editing work on Archangel Ink's behalf, and if you've done some of your own projects. So yeah, just let us know anything you think.
Sure. First thoughts on audio production, as you were saying, it reminded me that I have experience with this. You've actually trained me to be able to go in and master and edit an audiobook. And I think sometimes I take that for granted because I'm able to go in and do that on my own. So my first thought is that it's a complicated process. It's a very you have to really know what you're doing, and it's something you can definitely you can DIY, you can learn it yourself. But there's a huge learning curve to getting a completely finished audiobook. You have to go and record it, and there's all kinds of stuff that goes into that, and then you have to make sure that it's mastered and ready to go for ACX, which is Audiobook Creation Exchange, I believe. ACX, for those that aren't familiar, is where you go and upload your books so that it can then go to Audible and then elsewhere as well. I can't remember off the top of my head. I don't do anything Apple, so I don't even remember what that's called.
Right. So ACX is Audible Creation Exchange. It's acx.com. Audible is a subsidiary of Amazon.com. And if you sign up with them, you will make your book available through Amazon, through Audible, and through the iTunes bookstore. So
I couldn't even think of iTunes.
Yeah. So it's kind of an umbrella company. Now there is also Findaway Voices.
Yes.
Which is kind of cool, and maybe we can bookmark that and talk about it another time. But they make it available through a number of other distribution channels, including those that I mentioned, but also a number of educational institutions, libraries, and places, sort of collections that you can write from. The people who access them don't necessarily purchase your book, but you do get a portion of it. It's kind of like the Kindle Lending Library, but for audiobooks, and so that's kind of cool. The thing about Findaway is it is an aggregator, so it's going to function like a Draft to Digital or a Lulu or something. So you don't actually get all of the profit of whatever the royalty is. You actually get a percentage of it. Now, you're getting a percentage of a percentage. So somebody purchases your audiobook, let's say for $20, you might actually, if you are selling it directly through Audible or through ACX, you might actually get $5 or $10 from it. And if you did it through Findaway, you might get 80% of that $5 or $10. So you might get $4 or $8 or something like that. But the trade-off is you make it available through many other channels, and you have the option to make it not available or to not distribute through the ACX channels directly. So you can upload also to ACX non-exclusively, but you can do it through find a way to get to those other channels and kind of have a hybrid strategy, which could work pretty well. But anyway, so that's kind of the back end and the distribution side of audio production. So you mentioned, you've had a chance to master, and that's something that I kind of bootstrap myself as well. I've had, started 6-7 years ago, 8 years ago, maybe.
I think you have a book still on Amazon, right? You and Buck Flogging.
Right.
I think you had originally sent that book to me and said, Jordan, here's an intro to it. And it actually is still, for the most part, it's a good intro. I think there's definitely things that have changed in the past 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
But yeah. I just thought about that, and because I read that, it was very helpful.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah. So we do have it online. It's 99 cents if you look it up on Amazon, but you can also visit archangelink.com/audible if you want to download a PDF edition, and we'll include a link down in the notes of this video after the conversation. But yeah, it's the first part of the book is kind of Buck's portion, where he's talking about the audiobook market, and it's sort of an energy enthusiasm gathering project. Like, hey, this is where things are going, and what's kind of cool about it, and a little bit of our experience at that point. But then there's also the second half of the book, which I actually created originally as a training module for another team member who used to be with us and used to do audio work with us. I wanted to give a good overview of the step-by-step process that I discovered, what worked for me. Now, I'm not a trained audio engineer, but we've been fortunate enough to produce at this point several hundred audiobooks, and either under my direct or indirect supervision. And we've learned a lot, and we definitely made our share of mistakes along the way. But fortunately, we've been able to produce some things that are pretty good quality, and have worked really well for some of our authors, and that's been pretty neat. But yeah, if anybody's interested in learning more about that, you can definitely check out that free resource, archangelink.com/audible, and you can kind of poke around. There's a video that I have on YouTube where I kind of outline what it actually looks like in real time, and it's very how to say, it's arduous. It's a very painstaking and sort of time intensive process. You might, as you get better with it, it'll take you a little bit less time, but it's just a very finicky, detailed process, and something that Jordan, from doing work for us and then working on your own, you can spend a lot of time doing it, and it's something that takes a little bit of wherewithal to get comfortable with.
I think because you want to get a good finished product, and I feel like that's where audiobook is tough, because every book that's out there is going to have some kind of proofing errors. One of my publishing buddies he tells me the best way to find a final proofing error is to publish, which I get and agree with. There's always going to be things. There's things in my book I just released that I know there's errors in there. I've seen them, and it's I have to let, and you guys have. That's one of the things you guys have said, that don't let perfection be. Oh, finish it for me, Rob. You and Christy say it all the time. I had it in my head and I couldn't say it. Be the enemy of God. There you go.
Yeah. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Something like that. Yeah. And done is better than unfinished or unfinished perfect. Something like that. Anyway.
Yeah. But I think with audiobooks, and maybe you're about to say that, it's a little bit rougher, because you really want it to be finished. You don't want there to be any kind of glaring mistakes that are, people are like, whoa, that wasn't supposed to be in there, or there's like a really loud noise, or anything like that. For one, it's not going to pass when you submit it through ACX, and it's going to be difficult and even more painstaking to go through it on what do I need to fix here. But you want to have a good user experience, and that really takes some time and effort to do it, regardless of how much you know. If you don't know how to do it, you have to spend time learning that in the beginning, and it takes a little trial and error too, because you don't necessarily know. That's where I was lucky that you guys trained me, because you had some trial and error experience of your own that I was able to avoid.
Yeah, it was funny. We were fortunate. So I started this company with Matt Stone, who was a health and nutrition writer, and later went on to start Buck Books and some other projects. And he had a little bit of recording experience. He has a good radio voice, and he had a decent microphone, and so he had actually recorded a couple of his books, which he was selling on his website on his own, just as an MP3 add-on for those. And so he said, okay, well, let's cool. do it and actually make it available for audio. So the way Archangel Ink kind of started was he was trying to grow his business. He was selling, again, exclusively through his own website, and said, if you can figure out a way to help expand the reach of the site and to build a bigger followership and increase sales, then I'll give you a cut of whatever we can make. And so I thought, all right, well, let's see about getting print editions created. I learned about print on demand. Let's see about getting onto Amazon and some of these other ebook channels, because the barrier of entry is a little bit lower. Most people have an Amazon account or a Barnes and Noble account or something like that, and are maybe a little bit more reluctant to put in their credit card information to just an individual's personal website. And so that might make it a little bit easier. And then obviously the audio edition, we'll just see what happens. And so it ended up working out pretty well. And I learned through the dozen or so books that he had to start with, how to do this process, how to go through this whole process, how to learn ebook formatting and print edition formatting and audio production. And anyway, it was all kind of, over a series of a month or not 1 month, but several months, maybe a year and a half or a couple of years. And eventually we started doing it for other folks. And we had one of the fun misbegotten steps that we had. I think the second audiobook that we put out, he recorded the whole thing. He got a pretty decent USB microphone. I think he was using a Yeti at the time. The one, by the way, that I recommend is the ATR 2100, in case anybody is interested in doing this.
That's the one I have and use as well.
Cool. Yeah, no. So it's a nice, reasonably priced one. I think you can usually get them on Amazon for $60 to $80. Yep. And you can obviously go pretty high end with microphones. You can definitely go a little bit lower cost than that. But that one works pretty well. A lot of podcasters use it. A lot of people who are kind of entry to mid-level in audio production.
Pop this camera off and show mine and try not to be too crazy here real quick. But that's what the ATR looks like.
Yeah.
And then you can also get a stand like this that attaches to a desk. And the stand was only about $12. So yeah, that's the microphone in brief. Sorry for the wooziness there, but thought I'd share. But yeah, I love the setup.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, it's a great mic, and having all that set up and being permanently fixed there, I imagine, makes it a little bit easier for you to just get on a video or get on a conference call or get on a podcast or something. That's something you do as well, and I'll give you a chance to mention or talk about that to whatever extent that you'd like.
Oh yeah, and before we talk about that, I was going to mention real quick. So with this setup, if you wanted to go into like how I did my most recent book. So I just recently released my most recent book called The Balance Point, and I recorded it, but I didn't actually record it in here because and I don't know if you could see from when I spun around the camera a little bit. This office is a little bit too big. There's a little bit too much echo in here. I tried to fix that a little bit with some bass traps up in the corner of my office, but it just wasn't enough. The space is too big. So I actually recorded, and a lot of people have said to do this, and I was like, okay, I'll try. I recorded it in my closet because we have a walk-in closet. And I had to sit on the ground. I probably could have grabbed a chair. I didn't really feel like doing that. I was like, I'm going to do this real quick. But the sound is much more, I don't know the right word. It's
warmer, less reverby.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I don't think I would normally have thought of that before I started getting into the audio engineering. But once you start hearing that, you can tell a huge difference from when you're in a big room versus when you're in a closet. And then when you go to master it and go to finish it up, it sounds so much better than it would be to have it in the other room. So that can be a little bit of a pain moving that if you don't have a studio set up. But for the most part, my voice may not sound, perfectly crisp and clear right now, but for video purposes, it's okay. But you always want to go and you want to make, as far as audiobooks go, you want to get the quality as good as you possibly can get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of the things I found, kind of like you mentioned, Jordan, is it's so much easier to work with a good quality initial production. There's a lot that you can do in post-production, but you can't do everything. And the better you can get it to start with, whether that's improving the room tone through, having a good working space, whether that's a closet or a dedicated pro studio or something, or your own delivery and, all of that, like whatever you can do to get really good at producing a good initial product is going to make the rest of the process so much easier. And whatever tweaks and adjustments that you can make in post-production, that much more effective and, produce that really good quality finished audiobook.
And recording your own book is fun too. I had fun with it. In some ways it's easier because I'm the author. I know what I'm trying to say. So if I go back and while I'm editing it and I see that I didn't say that, I didn't say exactly what the text said, then it's fine. I know that as long as I'm getting my point across, like the audiobook can be different than the regular book. Just in certain like very small places, you don't have to be like, it doesn't have to be 100% matching, which it'd be nice. You can play around a little bit. You can say extra things here and there. You can add a little bit. And I've done that before. I know one of the first audiobooks I ever listened to was Gary V and his Crushing It, I think is the name of the book. He ad-libbed a lot. He said, I'm going off script here. And he would go and like talk about a bunch of things. And I thought at the time that most audiobooks were like that. Now, most are not like that. Most are very, they follow a script. But I thought that was interesting. So I tried to do that every once in a while where it wouldn't be distracting in my book when I had an extra thought here or there.
Right. Yeah. When we do work for clients, we try and be pretty assiduous. There's a little bit of latitude, I think, that that I try to allow for in editing or proofing. So, for example, making minor changes. If an author says, read that last sentence again, just adjusting it and saying, hey, listen to that last sentence again, and then they might repeat it.
Yep.
So those sorts of little things, I think, are within the scope of it. But obviously, if you're the author, if you're the creator, you have more liberty to go off script and to rephrase things and to make the point in a different way if you think it conveys better as you're telling that story. So that's just kind of one of the nice things about having multiple formats for people who are sort of completionists, and who really love to have every version of something. Then you give them something a little bit extra, a little bit different in in the different edition.
Yep.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to mention as well is when it comes to audio production and getting a good consistent room tone. So you want. Let me backtrack for a second. One of the main ideas, I think, with audio production and why you want to get it all pretty good is because you don't have as much ease and flexibility in re-uploading. The re-uploading process, if you have to make changes, is kind of involved. We've had to do that a couple of times for authors, and it can be a several week process, where they basically have to review the whole material, the whole project again and confirm that everything is within the technical specifications and so forth. With a Kindle edition or even a print edition, you can re-upload a new file, and within 12 to 48 hours or so, everything's going to be live and you're good to go. But with an audio version, there's just more man hours that are involved at every step of the process. Whether that's the initial production, the narration, the editing, the mastering, the rendering of those files, uploading it, and then having it go through the review process of the distribution channel. There are just many more hands kind of touching it, and so it's just not a fast upload or update process. So to the extent that you want to get it done and done right, from the beginning.
Yep. And just another thing I thought of, Rob, that now that we're just, we're jumping a little bit, I think we should, in a future video, talk more about pre-orders, but I just had the thought that one of the biggest difficulties in the timing of a launch as far as an audiobook goes. So standard, normally what happens when people release their books, they'll release their book in Kindle and paperback editions, and then the audio comes eventually. But that doesn't have to happen. If you time things right, you can get it. And the timing on launch and all of that stuff is a very complicated and an in-depth process. For whatever reason, it seems to be where a lot of people trip up. But yeah, the one benefit to a pre-order is that if you put a pre-order on Amazon and put it up for 60 or 90 days, that starts the timer on, or it gives you that Amazon page so that you can then start your audiobook. So when you start an audiobook, at least with ACX, I'm not sure about Findaway Voices, but you have to have a book already published or in play on Amazon with a books page.
Right. It has to have an existing listing on Amazon in order to claim it and create an audio version for it.
Yeah, but if you have a pre-order up, you can claim that, and then you can get that started as well. So you're not having to wait. And, I've been fortunate. My last book, Volcanic Momentum, and then this one as well, I've been able to launch it with the multiple versions available at that time, because as far as the audiobook goes, I do it I get it done. I get it into ACX as soon as I possibly can.
Right. And so what's the advantage of having all three editions, print, digital, and
Sure.
audio all at once?
So biggest advantage in my mind is that when you're spending time on your launch, you want to be able to give everyone the best, or the version that they want.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, as far as like, ad spend and all that, you're sending traffic, you're spending time on a launch, you're sending people to the page to download your book. You want to give them the option, because then some people are going to go and then not be able to get that. And then you're going to release it later, but you had already spent money on the traffic to get there. That's in my mind why it's important to have at least the the three versions: Kindle, paperback, and audiobook. Now, we've talked before. It's hard. Like I said, it's hard to get the audiobook up because if you have it produced for you, there's extra time frames within that. When you're doing it yourself, like I have, you can really, as soon as I know my book is close to done, it may not be, it doesn't even need to be formatted. As soon as I have like what I consider the final proof, I can start recording. And I even actually did my own proof as a recording of my book. Whenever I in a mode where I don't believe the book is going to change that much more, unless I think that I'm going to scrap chapters, obviously I'm not going to start the recording. But I start recording as soon as I can to then even do an actual proof of the book. Serves dual purposes there to be able to do that. But
yeah, and that's one of the recommendations that I've read and that we've passed on to folks who are looking to in-house production. How can I provide some of these services on my own? And one of the things that you can do is you can proofread it by reading it out loud. When you are reading it on a screen or on a sheet of paper, because you've been intimately involved with it, you've been creating it, you kind of have a sense of where things are going and what is supposed to be there, and your eyes can just kind of skip over the things that may not actually be on the page, but are correct and in your head. Whereas if you are reading it, you're providing a different pathway for your brain to process it. It has to kind of go through your visual cortex, and then out of your mouth, you have to process it into words. And so you have to slow down, and you have a different sort of attention and care that you put into it. And so you might see, oh, actually, I said the twice there. I didn't mean to. There shouldn't be a second the in that sentence or whatever. So it's a nice DIY practice. Even if you don't end up creating an audio version of your own, you can do it yourself. Just kind of read through it and say, okay, well, this is my final version. I just want to make sure that what I'm actually giving out to the world is what it should be and not what I imagine it to be, because my eyes have glazed over and I've seen it for months and months that I've been writing it.
It's a fantastic way to proof it. So I've done that method for the last two books I've done, and I consistently found 2 to 3 things that I consider. Well, I was like, oh, that doesn't, an extra word or something really like I don't even know what I was trying to say there. How did that slip by editor and stuff? I don't know what what was going on there, but consistently 2 or 3 like per chapter, which you'd think a book that's been edited and you've read it and it's been proofed, still. When you have a lot of words, there's going to be stuff that slips through, but it's a really good way to really give it a clean polish. For sure.
Yeah. So audio, folks out there who are interested, do it and see if that works for you. If you are looking to, just get it one final set of eyes, even if you don't have the money to hire another set of eyes, you can kind of force yourself to be that extra set of eyes by being ears and eyes at the same time. Cool. So did you have any other thoughts that you wanted to share on audio production, whether from, an engineering standpoint or from an authorial standpoint?
I mean, I love audiobooks. In some ways, I wish they would take off even faster because I have them and I want to sell more of them. And I think people are having a lot of success with them, but I think it's if you're looking at sales, it's fascinating to me how, and I hear other authors say this as well, paperback sales are still the winner. As far as royalties, I get the most royalties from paperbacks versus Kindle and audiobook. And it's interesting. You think, the audiobook is the next thing. But, people are in front of screens all day. They want to hold a real book in their hands. They're going to order a book. And maybe that's not the way it's going to be forever. And I think audiobook is definitely a great, it's great to have a version of your book in audiobook.
Right.
But it's not going to, I don't think it's going to take off like some authors will say. I mean, like I said, I hope that happens. I think it's just going to be what it's going to be. It may be a little bit more than before. I think people have shown research that there's been a lot of growth, but I don't think it's going to take over ebook or paperback by any means. People are still going to, at least for a while, in the near future, they're going to digest the content in the ways that they're doing it.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's true. And probably it'll depend in part on the individual author and their audience and how people, how they find them and what the relationship they have. So I was listening to a podcast recently, and Malcolm Gladwell was talking about his most recent book, the name of which escapes me at the moment, but he has an audiobook edition, which is, I think they call it like an enhanced audio edition. So it's basically like a podcast. And so he actually had excerpts when people are—
That's cool.
Yeah, and people are like quoted at length, let's say from videos or projects or other things. You actually hear their voice, and the way he said it, it's almost like it's 10 podcast episodes in sequence, all bundled together, and then sold as this one audiobook, because that's kind of how his chapters were divided. And it was already, I want to say the number was like 80%, of his sales in this or that market were from the audio edition, which was wild,
That's cool. Yeah.
And so people, partly because he's a fairly well-known author, and, he's got a big following in sort of the print and probably the digital market too, but he's also got a podcast, and there are a lot of young people who know him primarily through his podcast, and his podcast is well produced, and, he's got a distinctive voice, and people kind of know him. And so it just is almost natural for that audience to say, oh, you've got a book. Like, I don't really, I'm not going to read it in paper. Like, I know who you are. I know how you sound. And sure, I'll spend $20 or $30 or whatever it is on the audio edition, so I can kind of get these cool, interesting stories and interact with the book in that way. So I do think, it will vary depending on it. If you have a big podcaster, like Gary Vee, you listen to Gary Vee's audio edition. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who are reading his print edition too, but a ton of people know him through his video and audio material. And so that may, and I don't have the data on it, but I would imagine that impacts whether, he's getting more or fewer sales in that version versus, some of the other versions.
Yeah, no, I like that Malcolm Gladwell story. I saw that book on Audible too. I was thinking about picking it up. I don't remember the title of it, because I was like, I like his books, but I think that's just a thought, and we could probably do a whole episode on this too. But just the idea of being innovative, I think some of the best books on Amazon are the ones that are innovative and maybe just going a little bit against the crowd. And we always share with our authors that you want the title of your book to stand out, and not necessarily just say exactly what your book's about, because that's what the subtitle's for. But make your title interesting, make it memorable. And I think, that's just him doing that with the audiobook is cool, because that's like to me, that's like a very innovative and advanced way to really make it even more valuable for the people that are downloading. And that's super cool. It makes me want to go get it.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Well, if you do, let me know what you think.
Yeah, I will.
But yeah, and it reminds me of I think it was some TED Talk that I saw, and it said that they looked at all these different metrics to determine what the likelihood of success was for these startup companies, and having a good business plan, having solid like backers, financial backers or patrons, 5 or 6 different dimensions, and the one that they found that was most associated with success for a company was timing. Whether sometimes it's just by luck, you happen to be there at the right time in the right place with the right sort of product. And they used an example of something, I don't even remember what it was, but it was pre-YouTube, like a video streaming kind of deal. And I vaguely, probably encountered it and was like, oh yeah, I sort of remember hearing about that, but it just wasn't the right time. And then, a couple of years later, YouTube came around and it took off, and it was good timing. So obviously, you you want to put forward the best product that you can, but a lot of it, like you said, is just paying attention, being a little bit innovative, and then striking while the iron is hot, and you know, finding something that the audience is going to respond to, and being, you know, just on the cusp of it, so you can kind of ride the wave, and those are the people who end up being kind of the biggest winners as technologies evolved and new opportunities come up, you know, that they have everything kind of polished and good and strong and all of that, ideally, but also they just, you know, strike at the right time.
Yep.
Cool. Okay. Oh, and so one other thing I wanted to mention very briefly, with Find Away Voices, I know you mentioned you weren't sure if you can upload a book without having an Amazon listing there. You can, actually. So that's one other advantage. If you are looking to do a you know, a 3-edition launch, you know, have everything all available at once, you can kind of use Find Away and time it around that. I don't know how close of an estimate they can give you for you know, when it's going to be available and actually uploaded and in that distribution channel. But so it might be a little hard, you know, they might not be able to say, okay, if you upload it today by November 15th, you're going to have the listing on Amazon. And that's when you should plan to have your other editions up. But, you know, maybe if you just kind of keep an eye on it, use Find Away, work on those other editions, and then have them kind of in the wings ready for when that releases, you can have that soft launch, you know, right around then, and then, you know, your big launch, and time it out that way. So anyway, yeah, I think that is a good topic to talk about, timing and sequencing of launch to help maximize the you know, the impact that you have, all of that traffic that you're driving, all of that energy and enthusiasm, and you're getting people over to your sales page, and how do you take best advantage of that? I think that would be a good topic for a subsequent Archangel Ink Live.
Definitely.
But folks, if you have questions or comments or other ideas or anything that seems kind of interesting, or you're uncertain about on what we talked about, definitely feel free to drop in and let us know. Do you have anything else that you wanted to share for tonight, Jordan?
I'm good.
Cool.
I think we got some great ideas for the future. I mean, we could just keep talking if you want, but I don't. Yeah. We're already hitting the half-an-hour mark, so we'll just shove it into next week.
Sounds good. Yeah, like we said the first episode, let's leave a little in the tank for next time. And, cool. So with that, I am Rob Archangel, and you are
Jordan Ring.
Cool. And we are Archangel Ink Live. Thanks, Jordan, and everybody else. Feel free to check out our videos, comment, like, share, all that good stuff. And thanks for watching, everybody.
Good deal.